Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome back to yet another God of War video. With us still coming off the huge news of God of War Ragnarok's release date, today I wanted to have a proper in-depth look at the Jotnar edition of the games, as I believe there are numerous secrets hidden away in the contents of its promotional material, ones that do allude to very significant and important events we may see in game. So, today, I will be pointing out everything I have been able to find, breaking it down and dissecting it from multiple angles, as quite a lot of these can be seen from a different lens. By doing so, it gives us all a rough idea of how the main game's narrative will unfold. To start things off, I will be dissecting the mural on the box, and then talking about the two figures, followed by the Draupnir ring, the steel case of the game, as well as the most important item here, the Yggdrasil cloth mat, as I think it sneakily does reveal the location of one of the main characters of the game we are yet to meet. Plus, it actually does show off a few hidden characters in the universe that you may have not met. But as always guys, before we do begin, I would super appreciate it if we could first get this video to about 500 likes. It's a fantastic way of supporting this channel, and it really does help it out as we get closer and closer to the release date of Ragnarok. I will be going deeper into the world of God of War and the mythologies that do surround it. So, if you are interested, please do stick around, as well as subscribe and tick that bell for more of that content. So, without any further ado, let's begin, shall we? Now, to really kick things off, let's first touch on the mural that we are first introduced to, the Knowledge Keeper's Shrine. For those of you who don't know, this is a bit of tapestry that isn't actually anything new to the God of War universe. This is in fact an old mural that made its very first appearance back in the 2018 game. The mural itself depicts the sad and tragic tale of Groa, the knowledge keeper of the Jotuns and sorceress of the giants. She was held up in extremely high regard by her people, because to them, her talent seemed to have no bounds. But this is something that would catch the Allfather's attention. Seeing her as a threat, Groa would tragically fall to the hands of Odin, and in her death, he would steal her library, acquiring all of her knowledge, as he seeks to find a way to prevent Ragnarok. Whilst I could be well overthinking things, I do believe that of all the murals and stories we've learnt in game, this one may be the most significant to the plot of Ragnarok. Santa Monica Studios have purposely been scattering bits of information throughout the world so that they could later feed this all into the next game, something they are clearly doing now. And I do strongly believe that of all the murals we have found, it is Groa's that will be the most impactful, because how this is framed is that it is the main source of Odin's knowledge of Jotnar magic, as well as their own knowledge of Ragnarok. We've known that for an extremely long time, Odin has had a deep interest in the Jotnar ability of foresight, something that he was willing to cause a massacre over. So with this information in tow, I think there's a lot more going on with this mural than does meet the eye. Again, I could be looking into this way too deep, but there has to be a reason why, of all murals, this is the one that's used for the collector's edition. Now in the as aforementioned editions, there are two Vanir carved figurines. Initially, at first, I believed them to be Brock and Sindri, just from the surface level design. But after taking a better look at them, I believe them to be two Vanir gods, that's being Freya and Freya. The reason I believe it is these two is because throughout the 2018 game, we have only ever established two living and breathing Vanir gods. Freya, who we meet on a frequent basis throughout the story, and Freya, a figure that we learn much about through our travels in Alphein. Both are huge influential figures in Norse mythology, as Freya is Odin's ex-wife, and Freya himself was actually the catalyst to the Aesir-Vanir War, as he was unjustly tortured by the barbarians. After these events, Freya would retreat to the world of Alphein, and he would become their leader for a very long time, with both the Light and Dark Elves heralding him as their new lord. Freya was able to maintain a form of peace that Alfheim had never seen, halting a long, unending generational war. But for reasons still yet unknown, one day, Freya just mysteriously disappeared, and thus the war would erupt once more. Now, from what we have seen of the Ragnarok trailer, we know we will be going back to the world of Alfheim, and we know that Freya is hunting Kratos, so it would make sense that the twin carved statues are none other than Freya and Freya. The big question is right now, how exactly does this tie into the bigger picture? As after Freya's exile from Vanaheim, she has not seen her brother in what probably feels like millennia. I'm interested to see how this ties into the main narrative, as I imagine both of the Vanir gods share a lot of disdain towards the Aesir at this point. Now, a nice little addition here is the Draupnir ring. Now, for those of you who don't know, this was a ring worn by Odin himself, commissioned and forged by the likes of Brock and Sindri. It is quite a unique ring in this mythology, because every 9th day, of course in homage to the 9 realms, the ring itself would spawn 8 other rings from its very being. Those rings would then be given to very special individuals as a symbol of divinity and wealth. In Norse mythology, Odin would give his ring to Balder on his deathbed, but it would later be retrieved and returned to the Allfather when they did try to resurrect him from hell. I will say, I am surprised to see the inclusion of the ring here, because in the grand calculus of Ragnarok, it is a rather minor item in the universe. So it does raise my own suspicions here as to what else could possibly be going on with the ring, as I do suspect it may end up being a sort of MacGuffin that allows Kratos and Atreus to travel to the likes of Asgard. Plus, it would also give us a reason to actually travel to the depths of Helheim, maybe having us go toe-to-toe with Balder one final time. Just an interesting idea on my end that I could actually see happen. Whilst not too important, I do wish to briefly touch on the runic message on the back of the steel case, as well, many of us can't read it. So I'm going to decipher it here and read the contents of the back of this steel case. And it does say the following. Twilight beckons. The bear and wolf travel the realms 9, hoping to stop that which seems inevitable. Their bonds will be tested, yet they must hold together for the good of all. So basically, it's a synopsis of what's going on with the game. Nothing too crazy, mind you, but I do think it's quite interesting how they have been referring to Kratos and Atreus as bear and wolf, somewhat linking back to the badges that are part of the Jotnar edition. And seeing as we're talking about that, it also comes with a falcon badge, something homaging Faye. I am most certainly interested to see how much of a capacity does Faye play into this game's story, because although she is long gone, she is aware of the events that would unfold in the 2018 game. So the real question here is, how far forward did her foresight truly go? Well, I suppose we will only find that out in game. Now, the final thing I will be touching on from the Jotnar edition is the cloth mat, and there is so much going on here. So first off, let's first decipher the message in the top left, and then point out interesting things on the map that you may not actually know. So the runic message says the following. For Brock and Sindri and their ambitions to become the world's greatest blacksmiths, training in the dwarven home realm was only the beginning of their path. Sure, they could create wonders like Draupnir and the Cloak of Feathers, but true genius requires a broad education. They sort it out in all 9 realms, as well as the space in between the great world tree, Yggdrasil. Besting their previous creations with the hammer Mjolnir and the great Leviathan axe. None save the gods have been able to chart our strange geography. But among mortals, few can boast the expertise by the Haldra brothers, whose ability to navigate and transverse the realms even rival that of the Allfather. So this is an incredible item to include, because it features so much. It teaches us just how knowledgeable Brock and Sindri are, to the point that they are nearly as smart as the Allfather himself. Along with this, they have been able to document their journey throughout all of the 9 realms, something that is really unheard of in the vast world of Norse mythology, and I suppose in many ways does answer our questions from the previous game of how exactly are they able to travel from one spot to another so seamlessly. I think on my end, it's pretty safe to assume that this may allude to a new fast travel system, one that will allow you to travel from realm to realm without having to access the Bifrost Bridge. We also get our first name drop of the Cloak of Feathers. For those unaware, the cloak was one of many gifts given by Brock and Sindri to the Aesir. This was done to somewhat gain their favour, as the cloak itself came alongside Mjolnir, Draupnir, and Gungnir. Now the cloak would be given as a gift to Freya, something that would complement her title as Valkyrie Queen, as the cloak had the ability to transform its wielder to any feathered creature of their desires. Something we actually have seen in game, and I think we get a little sneak feature of it during the father-son opening. But once again, that is a prediction on my end. Now over to the mural itself. Let's talk about it and dissect what is going on. So let's start from the very top and then work our way down. So for those of you who are still kind of new to Norse mythology, each and every realm is tied to that of the world tree, Yggdrasil. It binds each of the realms to each other, allowing travel and movement between them. However, each of the realms themselves operate on their own different plane of reality, hence why Asgard is at the top to somewhat symbolize a form of heaven, and Helheim is at the dead bottom, symbolizing hell and the underworld. Now, back on the topic of Asgard, here at the very top, for the first time, we can actually see Asgard, as well as the infamous Rainbow Bridge. It seems like around the walls of Asgard is a small village, and more interestingly, in the top left, there is a dragon. Now, I cannot say what dragon this is specifically, because honestly, it's hard to pinpoint who this is, because we meet about 5 different dragons in the 2018 game, so it very well could be one of the 4 that do survive. But if I were to guess, it could possibly be Fafnir, the dwarf that was transformed into a dragon that we do meet, as it is the most infamous one out of Norse mythology. As we go lower through the world tree, we next see Jotunheim with the giant finger mountain on the right hand side. And what interests me is the dead middle of Jotunheim, as it looks to be a grand canyon of sorts that sits in the dead middle, possibly hinting at us exploring the realm of Jotunheim and the ultimate fate of the giants themselves. Because till this day, we still do not know what happened when they sealed themselves off. We then next turn our sights to Alphein, and what's interesting here is if we look at the base of Alphein, we see what I can only believe to be catacombs, something the first trailer does actually show us briefly. Plus, we now currently know that the Light Elves are reigning victorious, with the light of Alfheim on their side. It's implied that the Dark Elves have been driven underground. So I am intrigued to see why we will be returning back to that realm, but it very well could be tying into my theory about Freya. Now, as we turn our gaze to the next realm, we finally get to see Vanaheim, and on this map, we actually see Skoll and Hati floating above them, somewhat loosely connected to Asgard. Now, Skoll and Hati are very important figures in Norse mythology, as they are 2 children of the giant wolf Fenrir. Once the beast was imprisoned, his kin would be taken and be enslaved by Odin, releasing them into the sky to chase the sun and the moon, because when they consume them, it does determine when Ragnarok begins. So Odin has been manipulating them in order to prevent Ragnarok from finally unfolding. Next, we of course have the realm of Midgard, which is occupied by Jormungandr and does have the house of Kratos and Atreus. So nothing too crazy going on here, but as we start to get to the bottom of the world tree is where things really take a turn. We now come to the next realm of Svartalfheim, or better known as Nidavellir. This is the home world of the dwarves, and in terms of size and scope, the realm of Nidavellir seems vast and deep, as we can see that below the surface, they are mining their realm's resources. But as we look a little bit deeper, we can see deep caverns beneath the surface. And I strongly do believe that this ties into the trailer, where we see Kratos fighting off soldiers of Valhalla. And if I were to throw a theory cap on, I strongly do believe that this is where Tyr has been imprisoned. So I believe that the map of Nidavellir indicates where Tyr has been imprisoned, in the darkest depths of Svartalfheim, guarded by the warriors of Valhalla. Now, as we keep going down, we get to both Niflheim and Muspelheim, realms that are tied to each other, as they were the very first to come into being at the dawn of time. As we look at both, we do get a sneak peek at Surtur and his humongous sword, as well as Aldenblar, the great cow that existed at the dawn of reality, that fed Ymir and would later give creation and life to Buri, the great ancestor of Odin and his two brothers. What interests me the most though, is that if we look at Niflheim on the far right hand side, we see quite a large figure that is presumably guarding a gate. Who this is something I'm not entirely sure about, but with the amount of depth that Niflheim has, I'm willing to bet that there is something beneath the surface of this realm. Now onto our next and final realm here, we have Helheim. Now, nothing too crazy is going on here, as it is still the same desolate afterlife that we are familiar with. But on this map is the figure standing to the left of the giant bird. It's quite well hidden here, but if I'm a betting man, I actually believe this to be Fenrir, cast to the deepest realm of the world tree by Odin, probably in the hopes that he would never escape, a feat very, very few has managed to achieve. So narratively, I think it would make sense for a character like Fenrir to be locked away here. Now, the final two things I do wish to touch on is the temple on the left and the dragon on the right. If I'm honest, I'm not too sure what this temple is, but if I'm going off my own knowledge of the God of War universe that is, I believe this to be one of Tyr's temples that he used in order to hide away the Jotunheim gate. Because if you think about it, he's the only individual that has the knowledge to pull off something like this. And a fun little Easter egg with this temple is that it seems to be guarded by the scroll of the world tree, Ragnarok. Now on the right hand side, we see a giant dragon wrapped around a compass and entangled in the roots of the world tree. This is none other than Needhog, a villainous figure in Norse mythology who was lost beneath Yggdrasil and Helheim. He is a being that gnaws at the roots of the world tree, consuming its fragments, as well as the condemned souls of Helheim. Whilst he does not play a large role in Norse mythology, he is often framed as an out-of-control monster that has been lost to time, a truly ancient being. This is currently everything I've been able to put together regarding the map, as well as the other bits of promotional material that have dropped. There's a lot of information going on here, but honestly, I'm surprised by the amount of substance included in the Jotnar edition. It seems like nothing on the surface level, but as we begin to peel that layer back, we get to see the amount of crazy depth, thinking, and knowledge that has really been put into the map here. It's like a really enthusiastic Norse-themed Easter egg hunt. So with that said guys, this has been it for me for the time being. I hope you have enjoyed this video and learnt more by doing so. I wanted to take a few extra days so I could break this down properly and analyze it under a better lens than just rush it out the door. So I do apologize for this not coming out sooner, but I wanted to make sure that when I made this video, I did it right, as I wanted to draw lines and parallels to the different ideas that have been established in both the game universe as well as its own source material, even if it does make me sound like a crazy person. So with that said, this has been it for me, guys. So as always, stay strong, stay well, and keep on fighting as Ragnarok comes for us all. Take care, everyone. I'll see you soon.